I'm thinking about buying land for a farm, big ass shotgun on my arm, dreaming about growing beans and corn.
I cannot get this stupid song out of my head. Hey guys, hope you're doing well today. I've done videos like this before where I've sort of tackled a specific genre or subgenre and talked about some of my favorite releases in it, and in this video, it feels like a black metal sort of day, so it's time to bust out the Burzum shirts and it's time to share your favorite black metal albums. My only caveat is no gatekeeping, no purism, don't be a douchebag in the comment section, and don't get all into the nitty-gritty of that isn't black metal or that subgenre isn't true black metal. Y'all better not throw a hissy fit that there are some hybrid black metal records on this list, because it's my list. Y'all can have yours, and I'd love to hear y'all's. I will say that I tried to condense this into a list that didn't just go over the same records that you hear on every single classic black metal list ever. There are certainly some albums on this list that are more popular, that are going to be more well-known, and I tried to find a good balance between underground and not so underground. But if you happen to not see anything from like Mayhem or any host of Burzum albums, case in point, or say like Dark Throne or like Transylvanian Hunger or In the Night Side Eclipse, it's because we have come to expect and we universally agreed those are some of the best records in black metal just pretty objectively, and they're classics for a damn good reason. I just didn't include them on this list because I didn't want to clog this list up with a bunch of records that you already know are fantastic. Let's start off with Agalloch's The Mantle. This is probably my one, like, you gotta give me this one in terms of like, yeah, it's very well known. It's very well known for a reason. It was my introduction to knowing that folk could be infused with black metal in such an amazing way, and some of my favorite black metal records are pagan-inspired, Celtic-inspired, have a lot of folk-isms, and Agalloch really did toe that line in a similar way to kind of like how Opeth sort of blends different genres into one and makes it so beautiful. This is a stunning record, and it really helped recontextualize how I viewed not only black metal, but extreme music as a whole when I first heard it. Next up, Woods of Desolation with Torn Beyond Reason. This record has one of my favorite drum tones of any black metal record, and I'm not going to spoil too much, but if you have not checked it out already, it has one of the most tortured and haunting vocalizations of any black metal record, and that's saying a lot considering that black metal is notorious for having some really Banshee Well-esque vocals, but the drum tone is what makes me come back to this thing. It is so heavy, it is so ruthless, but it is also very well produced, and I've not really heard that many black metal records that have matched its intensity, but also its uniqueness in many ways. I really wanted to include a record from Human Serpent, and I ended up going with Inhumane Minimalism. This is a Greek black metal project with some of the most brittle and shrill production, but it is also very well produced, so you might think that's a little bit of a contradiction, but the tone of this is so chromatic and so vibrant, but it also has this level of rawness and relentlessness to it. It's a very brief record, so it gets in and out before it can become too overly cumbersome. And that's a good thing because it is just from start to finish fire and brimstone, and one of the crown jewels of 2010's black metal for a good reason, and kind of in many ways a little bit of a hidden gem to a lot of people. I also know this is a project that YXM really likes, so you know it's gonna be good. And for being so heavy, it's also surprisingly catchy in the way a lot of the riffs come about, and I'm not someone that thinks that black metal can't be catchy in the same way that I don't think like death metal and brutal death metal can't be catchy. Next up, one of my favorite black metal records to release in the past 5 or 10 years, Saor's Forgotten Paths. This solo black metal project still just maintains one of the best takes on atmospheric black and folk metal that I have ever heard in my entire life, and that is a genre that I have dived very deep in to try to find amazing releases, and Saor is beautiful. Stunning soundscape, still heavy, but just triumphant in every sense of the word. It really just makes you feel like you are in this fantasy world in such a great way, and not in the type of way that a band like Caladan Brood or Summoning would, but sort of like you slipped into, like, you know, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Chronicles of Narnia, and you are just in this stunning tapestry of a fantasy world, and there are very few records that have just engrossed me and pulled me in this way, and that's why it was one of my favorite records the year it released, and in retrospect was my favorite record the year it released. This is a record that's a bit on the fringe of black metal, but it definitely does fall into the sort of DSBM category, and it is probably my favorite DSBM record, Sadness's record, I Want to Be There. This is sort of like DSBM, but if you merged it with post-metal and the sort of really expansive atmosphere that a lot of post-metal sort of dwells in. If you want an example of what this sounds like, and I'll just leave it at this, because I want you to step into this record as blind as possible, because it really is one of my favorites on this list. Take like unlike the sort of harrowing sorrow of your average DSBM project, make the production really crisp and well put together, and sort of like what you would get from a Death Heaven or an Alcest, and then mix it in with the atmosphere and expansiveness of a post-rock band like Indie Halda, or a post-metal and post-rock band like Godspeed You Black Emperor. You're welcome. I had to throw in something for the true cult people and a sort of hidden gem, Uncreation's Dawn, Night of the Damnation. 1999, I believe this project came out of Finland, but it's kind of hard to find a lot. I remember stumbling upon this not too terribly long ago, and it's grown on me a lot. It has one of the catchiest, most grooviest sounds of any black metal record. It could definitely be called like black and roll in many ways, but it has sort of that 1980s death metal tone to the riffs, and it's surprisingly well put together for a 90s black metal demo. And I just wanted to shout it out because if you don't really like the really raw and primal stuff, but you want sort of that lo-fi aesthetic and that nostalgic aesthetic of black metal, give this a try. At the start of the video, when I said I would put something on the fringe, I don't know if you would classify this project as just black metal, but it's my list. I don't care. Anaal Nathrakh, hell is empty and all the devils are here. That is a good quote from The Tempest. I feel like I've heard so many metal bands use that. It's my calling card, The Metal Tempest, which I will say it did kind of come from that, but if I'm being completely honest, my name came from Caligula's horse. I could have put a solid 4 or 5 records from Anaal Nathrakh on this list. They're one of my favorite bands, period. I want to own more from them. I want to learn more about them. They are a blackened grindcore industrial death metal band. They have so many influences in them. It's really hard to like categorize them. They're like the Opeth of extreme music, but it is such a great record. And the main reason I put this here is when you hear about Anaal Nathrakh, this is kind of a record that is a little bit slept on. I don't really hear it brought up nearly as much as some of the other records that you'll hear when they're talked about in the contemporary scene, especially since a lot of their 2010s output gets more publicity nowadays. But if you want a black metal record that just doesn't let off the gas pedal, can really settle into some nice grooves, is extremely technical but very meticulously put together to be enjoyable without having to just be a music nerd and dissect everything, it really is a fantastic record. One of their more rawly produced ones, and in my personal opinion, one of their more accessible and catchy records if you're looking to get into their discography. And maybe it's not like their best record, and maybe even not my favorite Anaal Nathrakh record, but I thought it'd be cool to put this on this list because I knew I wanted to shout out Anaal Nathrakh, but I think this is a record that a lot of people should listen to if you aren't familiar with them or this record. I want to talk about Weakling's record Dead as Dreams. So for people that want to get into like the type of DSBM that Silencer performed vocally, if you want that like, yeah, blah, maybe this is up your alley. It's not nearly as like annoying as some of Silencer's works. I mean that in the nicest way. No offense, but full offense. The reason I go back to this record a lot, it's like an hour's worth of material, and I think the reason it stands out so much in the field and has gotten so much acclaim over the years, and one reason that I appreciate it a lot, is because it is one of the most scary black metal records I've ever heard. And for a genre that prides itself on being scary and forlorn and desolate and embodying this sort of immolation and damnation and this dark incantation, I think that it's kind of like you get desensitized after a while, and there's not many records that their eerie guitar tone can really play out in a way that feels genuinely frightening and terror-inducing, making you feel fearful for what comes next and being kind of unpredictable in that twisting labyrinth. Weakling sort of does that in a way that I've not heard many other black metal projects do, at least for me, and I'm kind of hard to phase when it comes to black metal in being scared in that sort of way, because I think that scared is a hard word to really apply to a lot of music, but when you feel it, you absolutely feel it. It accomplishes what other records try to accomplish. Do I even need to shout out Minas Morgul from Summoning? 1995, it's an Austrian atmospheric black metal project, and let's just say for decades now there have been bands trying to be Summoning, which I'm going to include another band that kind of tries to be Summoning, but there is no band that can just have this theatrical, cinematic, Tolkien-esque fantasy take on black metal. It scratches a specific itch, and if I am in the mood for like a theatrical, sort of cinematic black metal project that plays out that fantasy fantasy-esque sort of thing. There are so many dark ambient records that try to do that. There are so many black metal records that try to do that, especially in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and there have been plenty of summoning copycats, but I will always turn on a summoning record over any of the others, except the next one, being Caladan Brood, Echoes of Battle, released in 2013. Oh, I love Caladan Brood so much. If there has ever been a band to sort of torchbear for summoning, but not just be a copycat all the sludge metal and stoner bands that try to sound like fucking Black Sabbath, Caladan Brood takes it in such an awesome direction by upping the production, making everything so crisp and well put together. Massive production to this whole thing. It feels like a Goliath, and it really does pay homage to summoning while taking it in an entirely new direction and making it Caladan Brood's own. For American black metal that really does pay homage to like the Norwegian, just overall Scandinavian scene, I gotta shout out Wolves in the Throne Room with Thrice Woven. This is the best record from them. I feel like I can pretty safely say that, and when it comes to American black metal, you're not gonna get too much better unless you're talking about like Profanatica, but that's for the people that like more raw black metal, I would say. This is equal parts heavy, equal parts chaotic, equal parts measured, and I also kind of like Wolves in the Throne Room's take on like ambient music a little bit more, but that's just because I'm an ambient nerd. But if you're wanting their black metal era, I think this is their best album, in my personal opinion. Satyricon's record, Dark Medieval Times, released in 1993, their debut album, is one that I wanted to put on this list because amidst all the like Mayhems and Immortals and Celtic Frosts and Dark Thrones and Bathories and Venoms and Burzums, you don't hear Satyricon brought up nearly as much as I really think they should be. They were super young when they made this record, and it just holds up really fucking well for a debut. And I think in the pantheon of all of the records that you hear shuffled around from this era, I think this one definitely deserves to be in that high tier echelon. Because it doesn't really try to be over the top. I don't think it sounds too sweaty or try hard for the true cult aesthetic of the time. It's just a kick-ass, well-made black metal record that isn't too well produced, that isn't too raw and unlistenable. I do think while it is very highly regarded, don't get me wrong, it's Satyricon. If you released a black metal album in like the early to mid 1990s, you're probably held in pretty high regard. I wanted to put them here because if you've slept on this record, or maybe it got swept under the rug with all the other classics, you don't miss out on it. What are your guys' favorite black metal records? You can let me know down in the comment section below. I can't wait to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is, my name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.